And welcome to Local Edition on Time Warner Cable. I'm Steve Swatt with the Sacramento Report. In the next few minutes, we're going to get a Republican perspective of Governor Jerry Brown's spending priorities. My guest is Brian Jones, a member of the State Assembly from Santee in San Diego County. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate being here.
So recently, Governor Brown delivered his State of the State address. He talked about creating 1 million new jobs. He talked about a $1.6 billion reserve rainy day fund. A budget surplus of $3.2 billion, perhaps getting even larger down the road. But you're not buying his California comeback?
Well, not entirely, because we still have one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, one of the lowest employment participation rates in the country, still a lot of unfunded debts that we still haven't even talked about how we're going to solve those problems, infrastructure challenges, and at the same time he's talking about spending new money on high-speed rail and tunnels and these kind of things. And Governor Brown's, I have said and continue to say, he's a really good storyteller. And on the surface, it's a good story. But if you scratch the surface, you start to see that some of the story starts to fall apart. For example, the 1 million new jobs that he opened up with. Well, how many jobs have we lost over the last 4 years or the last 12 years to other states? He talked about raising the minimum wage. Well, how many jobs are going to be lost now that companies have to automate some of their production because they can't afford a 20% increase in the minimum wage?
You talked about losing jobs. Public Policy Institute of California a couple of years ago came out with a survey that indicated most of that was anecdotal. That yes, there was some loss of jobs, but we also got jobs in California also because businesses need to be in California. So it wasn't that much of a net factor.
Well, you've got to look at it. Of course, anybody can play with the numbers and say what they want to say about them. The governor's budget currently calls for 1,600 new state employees. He wants to hire 800 new employees to the DMV just to manage the new undocumented immigrant driver's license program. So while he's talking about creating new jobs, it seems to me his focus is on building government jobs while businesses continue to be here in California, but they're expanding in other states, and those are jobs that could be here in California.
So if you are critical of some of his spending, would you spend less, and then where would that money go? Into reserve, or would you give it back to the taxpayers? Or
well,
what?
We've got to look at a couple of things. When I got elected in 2010, the state budget at that point in time was $86 billion. The budget this year is $107 billion. So that's a growth of $20 billion in 4 years. A 25% increase in state spending. And I don't think most Californians in their household spending have had an increase of 25% over the last 4 years. So obviously the state government is consuming much more of the economic pie and the growth in the economic pie than California families are. So we have to look at the surplus. Again, Governor Brown told a really good story a year and a half ago. We have to have Prop 30. We have to have Prop 30. We have to increase taxes on the very wealthy, even though it increases taxes on everybody through the sales tax. And now we have a big surplus, and we expanded spending by $7 billion.
So what would you do with that surplus?
Well, the surplus, I think, needs to go back, two things. It needs to go back to the taxpayers to some degree. I don't think that we needed Prop 30. We needed to reprioritize our spending. And then another part is infrastructure in the state.
But if you send the surplus back to the public, I mean, 38 million Californians, they get an average of $84. That's it.
Well, it's $84 in their pocket that the state doesn't need, and we can start shrinking the size of California government.
All right. Brian Jones, member of the State Assembly from Santee, thanks for coming by and offering your perspective on the governor's budget. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
And thanks to our viewers for watching Local Edition on Time Warner Cable. A reminder, you can see this and other interviews on My Government On Demand, also on YouTube. Have a great day.